Hello, my name is Langston. I'm here with military election forecasting, and I'm going to be talking about the two top candidates for the Republican primary election 2024. It's very debated in political spaces which candidate is stronger in a general election, and I'm giving my opinion on that. Obviously, this is my opinion, this isn't everyone's, so feel free to criticize it. Before I give my opinion, I'm only doing the swing states, so I'm not doing the whole United States. But it really doesn't matter which Republican candidate performs better in California, Illinois, New York, or Maryland. Those states are going to go Democratic regardless. Same thing for on the Democratic side. It wouldn't really matter which candidate performs better in Alabama, Tennessee, West Virginia, or Wyoming. These are states that are going to go to the Republicans regardless. So I'm only doing the states and swing districts that matter. Obviously, states like Colorado, New Mexico, and Virginia, and Iowa and Ohio, and arguably Minnesota, New Hampshire, Maine. These are states that are, probably not going to go. They're going to vote for Republicans or Democrats regardless in 2024. But there's still states that have a history of being competitive, or states that were under 15%, or states that both parties have won recently. So they still fall under the swing state category, regardless of if they're really in reach for either candidate. Another thing I want to give is, before I, give my opinion, personally, I make sure I take my political beliefs out of politics. You saw that in my last election, my last 2024 Outlook prediction I did. But I am personally a Democrat. I'm someone that voted for Joe Biden in 2020. I'm from Georgia. I voted for Raphael Warnock and John Ossoff. I also voted for Raphael Warnock again in 2022. So I am a Democrat. I've only voted for Democratic candidates. But regardless, I'm going to be giving my opinion from a neutral bias. So I think that it's somewhat valuable because I wouldn't vote for either one of these candidates. But regardless, I can see the justification why many people would. And I'm going to be giving my opinion as to which candidate would do better against Democrats, in my opinion. So I'm going to work from west to east. So starting in the state of Nevada, I think Nevada is a state where you would see Donald Trump perform better than Ron DeSantis. And the reason why is, go back to, I think the 2022 midterm elections are a perfect example, where I think Ron DeSantis has a lot of similarities to a candidate like Adam Laxalt. And yes, Adam Laxalt got closer than Ron DeSantis, but this electorate was a much wider, much older electorate than what you usually see in Nevada. You go back to 2020, and you'll see that dang, I'm sorry, I couldn't find it. You go back to 2020, you'll see that Nevada was a state that Joe Biden won by a larger margin. But, there was a lot more turnout in Las Vegas. If you just look at this, 521,000 votes. You go to the 2022 Senate elections, you look at Nevada, Democrats got more votes in Clark County than they got in the whole state of Nevada in 2022. So there's going to be a lot more turnout from Las Vegas in particular, and that's going to benefit Democrats. So when looking at it from a statewide perspective, you're going to need a candidate that's going to do better in some of these rural counties. And though, it is proven it's not really enough to win Nevada, if you go back to 2022, you'll see that Catherine Cortez Masto, she did a little bit better in these counties. And she didn't do better because, she got more voters. She just did better because Donald Trump is just better at bringing out rural margins. If there's, more rural turnout, obviously the county's going to shift right. If there's less rural turnout, and it's the same Democratic turnout, this county's going to shift left. So for Ron DeSantis, he would not do as well in these rural parts of the state. And, you see a lot more turnout in Las Vegas. It would hurt any Republican candidate. And in the Reno area, he just wouldn't be able to. In the Reno area, I don't think that either one of the candidates would improve. But I still, want to note the fact that Donald Trump would be able to do better across the state of Nevada. And he's somewhat proven that compared to Mitt Romney and other Republicans in the past. In Arizona, I think that Ron DeSantis would perform better in Arizona than Donald Trump. I can't say that Ron DeSantis is the best candidate for Arizona because, you've seen numerous Republicans lose Arizona, whether we're talking about Blake Masters, who lost by the largest margin. We're talking about, looking at this Senate election, we're talking about Martha McSally, who lost here twice. Or we're talking about Joe Biden, who also won the state of Arizona against Donald Trump. So Republicans have had a losing streak in Arizona federally since 2018. So would be going on 6 years in 2024. And for Ron DeSantis, I don't think he's as controversial as Donald Trump in Maricopa County. I don't think he'll do as well with rural voters, and I don't think that Ron DeSantis has the appeal with specifically Mexican-American voters the same way Donald Trump has been able to. But regardless, I think that Ron DeSantis is not as bad in the suburbs as Donald Trump. So I think that he will be able to not do as poorly in Arizona as Donald Trump has. But I could be wrong, because Donald Trump is the best performing Republican candidate in Arizona in the last couple of election cycles, which really saying a lot since he lost Arizona. In Colorado, I think that Ron DeSantis will perform a little bit better. I could see him performing a little bit worse, because you saw in 2022 where Cory Gardner, who lost by more than Donald Trump because of just Colorado's leftward swing, but the main reason he did not get as much turnout in the suburbs, in the rural areas, so that caused him to underperform Donald Trump. So you would likely see Ron DeSantis get less rural turnout than Donald Trump. I don't think he would do as bad in the suburbs as Donald Trump. So I think that he would perform a little bit better, considering there's more people that live in the suburbs. But I don't think he would perform well in the suburbs. I just don't think he would perform as bad. In New Mexico, I think that Donald Trump would be the clear favorite. I think that both of these candidates don't really have a chance of winning New Mexico or Colorado. But I think that Donald Trump is better for rural voters. And when thinking about rural voters in New Mexico, I think he would perform better than Ron DeSantis across the state. Texas is very, very debatable, because I see a lot of similarities between Ron DeSantis and Ted Cruz. And Donald Trump has not performed well in Texas compared to other Republicans. But realistically, Donald Trump has performed well in Texas for the circumstances. The fact that Texas is a majority state. It has so many things that Republicans really should not be performing well. Texas is the only majority state in the country that is Republican. So, Republicans are performing better in Texas than they should be with their demographics they're working with. So, and the main reason is because Donald Trump has been able to get out a lot of rural voters that would not vote without Donald Trump being on the ballot. But also, it's fair to point out that he's really struggled in a lot of these suburban counties in Texas, most notably, Denton, Collin County. And I think that Ron DeSantis would struggle in a lot of these places as well. But I don't think he would struggle by as much as Donald Trump. But I do think he would underperform in the rural areas. But I do think he would outperform Trump by, maybe not by much, but he'll be able to outperform Trump a little bit across the state of Texas. In Florida, I think that this is obviously Ron DeSantis' home state. So I think that Ron DeSantis would perform better in the state of Florida than, I think he would perform better in the state of Florida than Donald Trump. So this is his home state. I think that, he has more appeal to older white voters, more appeal to suburbanites, something, Donald Trump would do better in the exurban areas of Florida, probably in the Panhandle region. But I do think that Ron DeSantis would overall perform better across the state. Georgia, I think that Donald Trump would perform better in Georgia. And I know that's something that most people take as controversial, but I am from Georgia. Georgia is my home state. And Donald Trump has performed better than all Republican candidates in Georgia. If you look in 2020, Georgia was a state that Joe Biden nearly won against Donald Trump. But if you go to the Senate race, Democrats won Georgia by 1.2 points and 2 points. And in 2022, Democrats won Georgia by 3 points, and they still outperformed Donald Trump in the first round by winning the state by 0.8, 0.9%. So without Donald Trump being on the ballot, Republicans have not done as well in a lot of these rural counties. And for Ron DeSantis, he's still going to get destroyed by black voters in the Atlanta area. So for our Republican candidates, they still have to face these urban black voters that are going to vote for any Democratic candidate. And for Ron DeSantis, some of the things that he's done when we're talking about Ron DeSantis attacking black history in particular, this is going to be something that will really motivate a lot of black voters to come out in the Atlanta area, which is something that, has really hurt Republicans for the last couple of years. And yes, a lot of black voters would come out against Donald Trump, But Donald Trump has not specifically said anything that has specifically attacked black people in general. I think that many people have accused him of saying certain things, or, you know, put two and two together and think he's attacked the black community. And yes, you know, I think like 85% of black people think Donald Trump is a racist. But regardless, you know, he's never specifically mentioned them by name. But Ron DeSantis actually has done that. So, you know, he's given, you know, a lot of these younger black voters in particular in places like Fulton County, you know, DeKalb County, Clayton County, and, you know, Henry, a lot of these other Atlanta suburban counties, as well as Savannah and a lot of other parts of the state, a reason to vote. And for Donald Trump, you know, he can count on the fact that, you know, a lot of black voters are not satisfied with Joe Biden. And yes, the vast majority are going to vote for him regardless. But still, you know, he can count on the fact that a lot of them just won't vote just because they don't feel the need to. But for Ron DeSantis, with some of the things he's done, he's motivated them to vote. So that's going to really hurt him in a lot of states like Georgia, as well as North Carolina. As you saw in 2022, Republicans did not have a great performance in North Carolina, considering that North Carolina's electorate was a lot wider than 2020. You saw the black electorate in North Carolina decrease pretty substantially, and the fact that Sherry Beasley only lost by 3 points with, you know, a more wider electorate, you know, that's a really worrisome sign for Republicans, because the sad thing is in 2020, Joe Biden did not get the black turnout in North Carolina that, you know, Democrats were expecting. You know, what he did in Georgia, he was not able to replicate in North Carolina. So the fact that not with good black turnout, he was able to only lose the state of North Carolina by 1%. And the fact that with significantly worse Democrats only lost by 3%, that's not good for Republicans, because, you know, if you see a motivated black electorate come out, you know, that could really spell worrisome signs and end up costing him the state. And I do think that for that reason, you know, Donald Trump is able to outperform our Republican candidates in a lot of these rural areas. And it's something that a lot of other Republican candidates can't necessarily replicate. And as you saw with Ted Budd, who was not really that tied to Trump, like he wasn't the most far-right Republican, he still did really badly in the suburbs. So that really says a lot for candidates like Ron DeSantis, that he's still going to do bad in the suburbs. You're probably going to see more black voters come out against him, and he's not going to get the same amount of rural turnout. So that could really spell signs for him losing North Carolina in 2024. And many people think Donald Trump will lose North Carolina as well, but I think he would have a better chance of holding on to it. In Virginia, I think that Ron DeSantis is the better candidate. Virginia is very similar to North Carolina and Georgia. I think that Ron DeSantis would really struggle with black voters in Virginia. But at the same time, I think that he would not do as bad in the suburbs as Donald Trump. But I do think he would not get as many rural voters out in Virginia. So that's all I have to say about that state. In Nebraska 2nd District, I think that Ron DeSantis would perform a little bit better. I think that he has a lot of similarities to Don Bacon. I do think that obviously our Republicans would probably lose Nebraska 2nd District at this point, but I think he would, you know, lose by a much smaller margin than Donald Trump in 2024. So that's something to pay attention to, just because I don't think he's as bad in the suburbs as Donald Trump. In Minnesota, I think that this is a very hard one. Very, very hard, but I would give it to Donald Trump. I think that Donald Trump has a lot more appeal to a lot of these working class voters than Ron DeSantis. I think that he'd be able to get a lot of these rural working class voters out to the polls, something that, you know, I don't think Ron DeSantis would do as well in. And regardless, both of these candidates are going to get crushed in the Minneapolis suburbs and Hennepin and Ramsey County. So I think that Donald Trump is a better candidate in Minnesota than Ron DeSantis. In Iowa, very similar. I think that Donald Trump has an ability to turn out these white, rural, and working class voters that no Republican candidate is able to replicate. So in 2024, I think that Donald Trump would be the clear favorite in terms of performing better across the state. I don't think it's a state the Democrats have a chance of winning regardless, but I still think he performed better. In Wisconsin, I think that Donald Trump would also perform better. And you saw it in 2022, where Republicans really struggled in Wisconsin in 2022. They just did not have the year they wanted in 2022. And it's something that was not really a good sign for them, because they wanted a much better, they wanted to perform a lot better in Wisconsin than they didn't. And, you know, Ron Johnson was able to nearly win Wisconsin, but, you know, mainly because he did not do as bad as Donald Trump in, these Milwaukee suburban counties. He still did not perform well, but he performed better than Donald Trump in these counties because, look at this, only 243,000 votes in Milwaukee County. But you go to 2020, Joe Biden got 317,000 votes here. So Democrats did not get the turnout in Milwaukee they wanted to, to realistically win Wisconsin. And they did better in Madison, but, in the Driftless area, Democrats held their ground. This was something that was really shocking that Mandela Barnes performed so well, especially with turnout not being good in Milwaukee. And so for Ron DeSantis, he's going to not do as well as Donald Trump in these rural areas. Donald Trump is going to do better with the white working class. He's going to do better in the Driftless region. He's going to turn out a lot of angry college students. A lot of these, college students in the Madison area, a lot of these voters in Madison will come out big against both candidates. And, you would see a lot of black turnout in Milwaukee against both candidates, but probably a little bit more against Ron DeSantis. And yes, Ron DeSantis will not do as bad as Donald Trump in the WOW counties. He's still going to perform bad in the WOW counties. So Donald Trump will still have a better chance of winning Wisconsin than Ron DeSantis, in my opinion. Same thing in Michigan. I think that in Michigan, Donald Trump will be able to do better in these rural working class areas. He'd do a lot better in Macomb County. I think that he would do worse in Grand Rapids, Oakland County, some of these Detroit suburbs, excluding Macomb County. But I think you would see a lot more black turnout against Ron DeSantis in Wayne County, Flint, Saginaw County. And I also think that he would not do as well in these, working class rural areas across the state. And, very similar thing in Pennsylvania as well. You saw this with, Dr. Oz's campaign, where he just was not able to perform as well as, Donald Trump across the state, mainly because he did worse in these rural working class counties. And Democrats did nearly improve in these suburban counties. So, and yeah, a lot of that was attributed to Mastriano as well being on the ballot, which crushed Democrats' chances. But, Donald Trump would do better in these rural working class areas. And yes, he might not win Bucks County. He might not win Erie County. He might not win Northampton County. But he would not be losing them by, losing Erie County by 9 points, losing Bucks County by 7 points. It's something that Donald Trump wouldn't do. And I don't think Ron DeSantis would either. But I still think that Ron DeSantis would perform badly in the Philadelphia suburbs. You would see a lot of black turnout in Philadelphia against both candidates, but more against Ron DeSantis. Ron DeSantis would perform worse probably in Allegheny County. A lot of these more college towns would come out bigger against Ron DeSantis than Donald Trump. And Donald Trump would still, I think that Donald Trump just has the appeal across the state that Ron DeSantis would just not be able to do. Ron DeSantis does not have the ability to do as well with the white working class and white rural voters. And very similar thing in Ohio, except Ohio is a lot much further to the right. I think that Donald Trump is just a stronger candidate across the Rust Belt in general than Ron DeSantis. And for New Hampshire, I think that Ron DeSantis would perform better. I think that amongst college-educated white voters in particular, I think that he would do better than Donald Trump across the state. I don't think he would, be able to probably win New Hampshire, but I still think he'd do better. And same thing for Maine as a state. I think that he would perform better in Maine as a state than Donald Trump, but in Maine's 2nd district, I think that Donald Trump would do better with white working class voters than than Ron DeSantis, and I think he'd perform better across that district. So when looking at this, I think that Donald Trump would nearly outperform Ron DeSantis in the 2024 election. And, Ron DeSantis has made himself a lot more controversial with, his 6-week abortion ban, with attacking Black history in particular, and with, his fight with Disney. Ron DeSantis has a lot of scandals, and Donald Trump is fighting cases in New York and Georgia right now. So, they're both very controversial candidates, but Donald Trump has a very supportive following, and Ron DeSantis does not have that. I don't think Ron DeSantis is as toxic with independents and suburban voters, but, regardless, a vote is a vote, and Donald Trump can count on his base, while Ron DeSantis cannot count on that. Ron DeSantis can count on, doing better in some demographics. But realistically, doing better doesn't really mean anything if it's not doing better enough to win. And looking across the state, across the country, it's pretty apparent that, Ron DeSantis would not do as bad in the suburbs as Donald Trump, but Donald Trump would do better with white rural voters, white working class voters, and I think that you would see a lot more opposition from black voters to Ron DeSantis, and I think that with Hispanic Latino voters, I think Donald Trump would do a little bit better amongst them. Yes, you saw Ron DeSantis do well in 2022, but that's not really representative of Mexican American voters, which are the largest Latino demographic across the country. So when looking at this map, if you had to pick a candidate to nominate, the most important states are these three Rust Belt states. They're Georgia, North Carolina, and Nevada. Arizona is the only state, Biden state, that I see Ron DeSantis performing better than Donald Trump in. Because, Texas and Florida, yes, but, these are states that Donald Trump won, and they'll probably win in 2024 regardless. So when looking at it, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Georgia, North Carolina, and Nevada, I think that Donald Trump would perform better. So I'm going to end this video with that and, just giving my opinion. Feel free to comment and subscribe and like the YouTube channel down below.